The screen is black, but the sound arrives first. A raw, gasping sob that hits you right in the chest. It's the sound of a heart breaking. And as the image fades in, we see her. A little girl, no more than 7, in a bright, sunshine yellow dress that should be a banner of joy. But now it's a stark contrast to the tragedy unfolding. Her small shoulders heave. Tears carve clean paths through the dust on her cheeks. And on her knee, a fresh, cruel scrape wells with blood, a vivid, painful scarlet against her skin. She's running, stumbling, her little legs pumping as if trying to escape the very world itself. This is Lily. And in this moment, her world is ending. If your heart is already aching, you're not alone. This is a story about the day that innocence fought back, and what happened next will change how you see courage forever. Stay with us, because you won't believe how this ends. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss this incredible journey. It was a Tuesday. The kind of perfect, blue, sky Tuesday that makes you believe everything is right with the world. On Oakwood Lane, the sun dappled through the mature oak trees, painting shifting patterns on the neatly manicured lawns. The air was warm, carrying the distant scent of cut grass and the lazy hum of a suburban afternoon. For 7-year-old Lily, this Tuesday was a canvas of pure potential. She had begged her mother, Sarah, to let her try out her new roller skates, the ones with the glittery purple wheels and the light-up heels. Sarah, a woman whose love for her daughter was the very axis her world spun on, had finally agreed. "Stay on the sidewalk, sweetie." Sarah had called from the porch, a mug of coffee warming her hands. "And don't go past Mrs. Henderson's mailbox." Lily had nodded, her chestnut pigtails bouncing, her entire being vibrating with excitement. The yellow dress was her favorite. It made her feel like a dancing sunbeam. For the first hour, it was pure magic. The clack, clack, clack of the wheels on the pavement, the satisfying click and flash of the lights with every push, the wide, unburdened smile on her face. It was a scene of perfect childhood joy. Sarah watched from the window, her heart swelling. This was the life she had worked so hard to build. A safe life, a good life. But peace is a fragile thing, a soap bubble shimmering in the air, destined to pop. The disruption came in the form of a low rumble, the sound of an engine being pushed too hard. A beat-up pickup truck, its bed filled with laughing, shouting teenagers, screeched around the corner and came to a halt a few houses down. From it spilled 3 boys. They were high school kids, their identities partially shrouded by the uniform of their tribe, blue and yellow varsity jackets, worn with a practiced swagger. The tallest one, Jake, carried a baseball bat slung over his shoulder like a rifle. His sidekicks, Mark and Leo, followed his lead with a pack mentality that was both casual and menacing. They were headed to the vacant lot at the end of the street, their usual haunt for illicit cigarettes and loud music. They paid no mind to the little girl on skates until her path inadvertently crossed theirs. Lily, concentrating hard on staying upright, wobbled a bit too far into the road, her skates carrying her into their line of sight. Jake stopped, a slow, cruel smirk spreading across his face. "Well, look what we have here," he said, his voice a lazy drawl, a baby bird that fell out of its nest. Lily froze, her eyes wide. She tried to skate back to the safety of the sidewalk, but her nerves made her clumsy. One of the wheels caught on a crack. She didn't fall, but the stumble was enough. Mark laughed, a short, sharp bark. "Think she needs some help flying." The boys fanned out, subtly blocking her path. The sun, once so friendly, now felt hot and exposing. The quiet street was no longer peaceful. It was isolated, a stage for a coming cruelty. "Nice dress." Jake sneered, tapping the bat lightly against his palm. "You going to a party? A tea party with your dolls?" Lily's bottom lip began to tremble. She looked back toward her house, so far away, the figure of her mother in the window, a distant, blurry promise of safety. I have to go," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't think your mommy's coming." Leo chimed in, his voice a higher, nastier pitch. "I think you're all alone out here." The psychological game had begun, and they were experts. They fed on the fear they created, a toxic currency that bought them a momentary sense of power. Jake took a step closer, looming over her. "You know, this is our street. You gotta pay a toll to skate on our street." Lily's breath hitched. She had no money, no concept of this kind of confrontation. She just shook her head, tears beginning to pool in her eyes. "No," Jake said, feigning surprise. "Then I guess we'll have to take those fancy skates." That was the final straw. The threat to her prized possession, the source of her Tuesday joy, broke the dam. A single, hot tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. The boys laughed, a harsh, discordant sound that shattered the afternoon's tranquility. "Oh, is the baby gonna cry?" Jake taunted. "You want us to give you something to cry about?" He swung the bat down, not at her but close, hitting the pavement with a loud, terrifying sierke that echoed off the houses. The sound was a gunshot to Lily's courage. She flinched so hard she lost her balance completely. This time she fell. Hard. Her knees scraped against the rough asphalt, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the searing humiliation and terror. The scrape on her right knee was deep, immediately welling with blood that dripped down her shin, a shocking stain against her white socks. The boys roared with laughter.
"Look, she's bleeding!"
What a klutz! That's when the sobs started. The raw, gut-wrenching sobs we heard at the very beginning. They were not just cries of pain, but of a violated spirit. Lily scrambled to her feet, abandoning her beautiful new skates on the pavement. She turned and ran, her yellow dress a flag of surrender, her bloodied knee a badge of her trauma. She didn't look back. She just ran, the sound of the boys' laughter chasing her all the way home. Inside the house, Sarah was putting a plate in the dishwasher when a primal instinct, a deep, cellular alarm, made her freeze. The laughter outside had an ugly edge to it. And then she heard it, the unmistakable heart-shattering sound of her daughter crying. She dropped the plate. It shattered in the sink, but she didn't hear it. She was already moving, throwing the front door open just as Lily stumbled up the porch steps and collapsed into her mother's legs, burying her face in Sarah's jeans, her small body shaking uncontrollably. Sarah's world narrowed to a single burning point. She knelt, her own knees grinding into the welcome mat grit, and gathered her daughter into her arms. "Lily, baby, what happened? Look at me, sweetheart." She cupped Lily's tear-streaked face, her eyes scanning for injury and finding the bloody, gravel-flecked wound. A cold, hard fury began to crystallize inside Sarah, a diamond forming under immense pressure. Her voice, however, remained calm, an anchor in her daughter's storm. "Who did this, Lily? Tell me." Between ragged, hiccuping sobs, the story tumbled out. The boys. The truck, the bats, the taunts. The terrifying crack of the bat on the pavement. The threat to take her skates. Sarah listened, her jaw tightening with every word. She looked up, her eyes scanning the street. She saw the abandoned roller skates lying in the road like a discarded dream. And then she saw them. The three boys, now walking away, their backs to her, their laughter still carrying on the breeze. They were headed back toward their truck, their job done, their afternoon's entertainment complete. They had no idea they had just poked a bear. No, not a bear, a lioness. And her cub was bleeding. Sarah's mind, usually a whirlwind of grocery lists and work deadlines and pediatrician appointments, became preternaturally clear. Every emotion, the rage, the heartbreak, the protective fury, was funneled into a single laser-focused beam of intent. This was not going to be a phone call to the school. This was not going to be a passive-aggressive note to their parents. This was not going to be swept under the rug with a mumbled, "Boys will be boys." The social contract had been shattered. This demanded a response written in a language these boys would understand. A language of consequence. She stood up, her movements fluid and deliberate. "Stay right here on the porch, baby," she said to Lily, her voice low and steady. "Mommy will be right back." She walked down the porch steps, her bare feet feeling every pebble on the concrete path. She didn't hurry. Her pace was measured, almost ceremonial. She walked past her flower beds, past the mailbox, and onto the street. She walked directly to the middle of the road and picked up Lily's roller skates. She held them in one hand, the glittery wheels now still and sad. And then she turned. She faced the retreating backs of the three teenagers, now almost at their truck, and she spoke. Her voice wasn't a scream. It wasn't a shriek. It was a command, clear, cold, and sharp as a scalpel slicing through the lazy afternoon air. "Hey!" The boys stopped. They turned around, looks of mild annoyance and amusement on their faces. They saw a woman in jeans and a t-shirt, barefoot, holding a pair of child's roller skates. They saw a mom. They underestimated her completely. Jake smirked. "Yeah, you lose something, lady," his friend snickered. Sarah began walking toward them. Her bare feet on the asphalt made no sound. It was a silent, terrifying approach. The smirk on Jake's face began to falter. There was something in her eyes, a flat, deadly calm that was more frightening than any amount of yelling. She stopped about 10 feet from them. She looked at each one of them in turn, her gaze lingering, memorizing their faces. "Did you have fun?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Did you three feel like big, strong men making a little girl cry? Did it make you feel powerful to terrorize a 7-year-old? Mark shuffled his feet. Leo looked away. But Jake, the ringleader, puffed out his chest. "We were just messing around. She shouldn't have been in the way." She fell all by herself. Sarah's head tilted slightly. "Is that so?" She took another step forward. "Let me explain something to you. That little girl is my entire world. You didn't just make her cry. You put your hands on my world. You scarred it. You blowed on it." She held up the roller skates. "You see these? You threatened to take these. You see that blood on the pavement back there? That's hers. You see the terror in her eyes? That's your creation." The boys were silent now. The air was thick with tension. They were starting to realize this wasn't a normal scolding. "You think because you're bigger, because you have a bat, that you have power." Sarah continued, her voice beginning to vibrate with a contained, seismic energy. "But you have no idea what real power is. Real power isn't terrorizing the helpless. That's cowardice. Real power is restraint. And right now, I am exercising a tremendous amount of restraint." Jake, feeling his authority slipping, gripped his baseball bat tighter. It was a subconscious gesture, but Sarah's eyes zeroed in on it. "What are you going to do?" he challenged, a bravado in his voice that he didn't feel. Sarah smiled then. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. "Oh, I'm not going to do anything to you," she said softly. "I'm going to give you a choice. A lesson, you see. The world you live in, this little bubble where you're the kings of this street, it's an illusion. And I'm about to pop it." She took one final step, closing the distance until she was standing directly in front of Jake. He was a head taller than her, but he seemed to shrink. "The bat," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Give it to me." Jake's knuckles were white. "No." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Sarah's free hand moved faster than any of them could process. It wasn't a grab or a wild swing. It was a precise, disarming maneuver, a fluid twist and pull that seemed almost effortless. One moment Jake was holding the bat, the next it was in Sarah's hand. His own grip had been rendered useless. His mouth fell open in stunned shock. Mark and Leo took a step back, their eyes wide. Sarah hefted the bat, feeling its weight. She looked at it, then back at the boys. The balance of power had just irrevocably shifted. "My husband," Sarah said, her tone conversational now, as if she were discussing the weather, "was a Marine. Force recon. He fought in places whose names you can't even pronounce. Before he left for his last deployment, he made me a promise. He said, 'Sarah, no matter what happens over there, I will make sure you and Lily are always safe.' And he kept that promise. He didn't come home in a uniform. He came home in an urn." She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle in the air. "But before he left, he spent 6 months teaching me everything he knew. Not just how to throw a punch, but how to break a man's will to fight, how to use his own aggression against him, how to defend what's mine." She looked at the bat in her hands. "He taught me how to handle things much bigger and more dangerous than a baseball bat. And he taught me that the most important weapon you have isn't your strength. It's your mind. It's the willingness to do what no one else is willing to do to protect your family." She turned and walked toward their pickup truck. The boys watched, paralyzed, unable to process what was happening. Sarah stopped next to the driver's side door. She looked back at them, her expression unreadable. "You chose to use your strength to bring terror to a child," she said. "That is a choice with consequences." And with that, she swung the bat. It wasn't a wild, angry swing. It was a controlled, powerful, professional swing. The crack of the aluminum bat against the truck's headlight was an explosive, sickening sound. Glass and plastic exploded into the street. The boys flinched as if they'd been struck themselves. She swung again. Sarah. The other headlight disintegrated. She moved to the front of the truck. Sharkey. The grill shattered. She walked to the driver's side window. She looked at Jake, held his terrified gaze, and then swung sideways. The window erupted into a cascade of 1,000 tiny diamonds, scattering across the asphalt, and the truck's seats with a sound like falling rain. The entire street was silent, save for the ringing in their ears and the tinkling of falling glass. The boys were statues, their faces pale masks of pure, unadulterated shock. They were varsity athletes, used to being the toughest guys in any room, and a barefoot mother in a T-shirt had just dismantled their world without breaking a sweat. Sarah walked back toward them, the bat still in her hand. She stopped and tossed it at Jake's feet. It clattered loudly on the pavement, the sound making all three of them jump. "Now," Sarah said, her voice returning to that calm, terrifying monotone. "Here is your choice. Option 1, you can go home. You can tell your parents what you did to a little girl today. You can tell them about the blood and the tears and the terror. And then you can tell them what I did to your truck. You can explain to them why a mother felt the need to do this. You can face their disappointment, their anger, and your own shame. You can get a job to pay for the damages. You can learn from this." She leaned in slightly. "Or, option 2, you can try to be tough guys. You can call the police. You can tell them a woman destroyed your property. And when they arrive, I will show them my bleeding daughter. I will tell them, in exact detail, what you did. I will press charges for assault, for terroristic threats, and for the emotional distress of a minor. I have the scrape, the blood, the abandoned skates, and a traumatized child as evidence. I will also make one phone call to the local news. I will tell them the story of the 3 high school athletes who brutally bullied a first grader. I will give them your names. And by tomorrow morning, your faces will be on the news. Your coaches will see it. College scouts will see it. The entire country will see it. Your reputation will be ash. Your choice." She stood straight, her work complete. "Get off my street." The boys didn't move for a full 10 seconds. They just stared at the wreckage of the truck, at the bat on the ground, at the fierce, unyielding woman in front of them. The illusion of their power was gone, replaced by the cold, hard reality of consequence. Jake was the first to break. He looked down at his feet, his shoulders slumping in utter defeat. Without a word, he picked up the bat, walked to the passenger side of the truck, and got in. Mark and Leo scrambled in after him. The engine coughed to life, and with 2 shattered headlights and a gaping hole where the driver's window should be, the truck did a slow, pathetic 3-point turn and crept down the street, a wounded animal slinking away in shame. Sarah watched them until they turned the corner and disappeared. Only then did she let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. The adrenaline began to recede, leaving a strange, hollow calm in its wake. She turned and walked back toward her house. Her daughter was still on the porch, her tears now dry, her eyes wide with a new, different kind of awe. She had seen everything. Sarah walked up the steps, knelt once more, and gathered Lily into a tight, silent hug. She held her for a long time, feeling the little girl's heartbeat slowly return to normal against her own. She then picked Lily up, carried her inside, and closed the door. The street was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, a respectful one, the silence after a storm. The story doesn't end there. The next day, there was a knock at Sarah's door. Standing on her porch were 3 very different-looking teenagers. They were dressed in plain clothes, their varsity jackets nowhere in seen. Their heads were bowed. Jake's father, a large, grim-faced man, stood behind them. Jake held a brand new pair of roller skates, an even better, more expensive model than the ones Lily had. He also held a card. "Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We are so sorry. There is no excuse for what we did. We told our parents everything. This is for Lily." He handed her the skates and the card, which was signed by all 3 boys, filled with clumsy, sincere apologies. Jake's father spoke, his voice heavy. "The truck is being repaired at our expense. These boys will be paying for it with their summer earnings. They are also suspended from the baseball team for the rest of the season. What you did was unorthodox. But I am not sure any lecture from me would have gotten through to them the way that did. They learned a lesson about consequences that they will never forget." Sarah simply nodded and accepted the peace offering. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Justice had been served, not by the system, but by a mother's love, which is the most powerful justice in the world. Weeks later, Lily was skating again on the sidewalk, her new skates flashing red and blue. She was more cautious, a little of her innocence forever scarred, but she was skating. And sometimes, When the high school boy's truck would drive slowly down the street, they would give a small, almost imperceptible nod of respect to the woman on the porch, the lioness who had reminded them that true strength is quiet and that the fiercest force on this planet is a mother protecting her child. This story is a testament to that. It's a reminder that sometimes, when the world is cruel to the innocent, a hero doesn't need a cape or a uniform. Sometimes, a hero is just a mom, barefoot on a Tuesday afternoon, who decides that enough is enough. Her love was her armor, her righteousness her weapon, and the result left an entire community. And now all of you, speechless. This was a story about the day a line was crossed, and a mother who redrew it in fire. We'd love to hear from you, to feel the reach of this message of courage. From which part of the country are you watching this video? Let us know in the comments below.